Meeting is called to order. This is the September 27th meeting of the Shrewsbury Select Board. First official meeting of the Select Board?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. Okay, it's a little unusual for us, but we're going to do executive session first. Okay, so this meeting is called to order, but we have a little bit of quick business to take care of. We're going to, I'm going to ask to adjourn into executive session for a couple of minutes, and then to, at the end of that, to reconvene into open session. So 5-10 minutes perhaps. Are we going to go in the other room?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, could I have a motion to adjourn and adjourn the open session, convene into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, or lease or value of real property, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the board per chapter General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, regarding 2 Chase Terrace.
So moved.
Second.
Second, a motion is second. This requires a voice vote.
Mr. DePaul, just for
Yes.
clarity, 10 Chase Terrace?
10?
10.
10 Chase Terrace. Okay. So moved. Second. Ms. Caspian?
Aye.
Ms. Lynn?
Aye.
Ms.
Conlon? Aye.
Mr. Samia?
Aye.
Mr. Powell? Aye, okay. We're going to convene into executive session. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. And sorry, that was a long 10 minutes. Okay, so back to our regular agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the bills, payrolls, and warrants?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. We have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 6th and September 13th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Okay, next order of business is announcements. I have a couple of announcements. The first one is, looks like we're having another little pest infestation. Spotted lanternflies are an invasive species that were brought to the state of Massachusetts unintentionally through tree shipments and commonly from trucks traveling from affected states. Take an extra 10 minutes on the October 1st, 2020. Take the extra 10 minutes on October 1st, 2022 to check the trees on your property for the spotted lanternfly. To learn more and report any findings, visit the Health Department's webpage on shrewsburymass.gov under Pest Management. These are pretty little little bugs, nice, colorful wings, but don't let them fool you. They're dangerous, and they have the potential to kill trees, and they have been spotted in the Route 20 area, correct? And the state is going to be treating for them, but so far the trees aren't going to be cut down. We hope we're not going to get to that point, but they are dangerous. The Route 20 corridor improvement webpage. Mass Department of Transportation will be completing an improvement project along Route 20, the Route 20 corridor in Shrewsbury from the Northborough Town Line to South and Green Street. The town has launched a new webpage for residents to find out more information on the project, including a presentation from MassDOT's public information meeting, which was held a week ago virtually. Their dedicated webpage, project tracking information, the Route 20 corridor master plan, and more is on that. Please visit the Department of Public Works current projects page on shrewsburymass.gov for more information. We have funding that was secured by Congressman McGovern. A lot of hard work went into that, particularly by Representative Kane. And even though it's being fast-tracked, it probably isn't going to happen until 2026. But the work is progressing, and there'll be more hearings on that as it moves along. But you should take a look at it because the design is a little bit different, but the hope is it's going to improve safety on that road. We have a vacancy on the Historic District Commission. Select Board is looking to is seeking to fill a vacancy on the Historic District Commission. Interested applicants must be registered voters of the town and are asked to submit a letter of interest and qualifications to the office of the Select Board, 100 Maple Ave, Shrewsbury, Mass, or by email to the board. Another page. No later than October 4th, 2022 at 4:30. Please contact the Office of the Town Manager at 508-841-8508 with any questions. And during the month of September, Aidan Horgan joined the Office of the Select Board and the Town Manager as our new administrative assistant. And we have one more announcement to make, and Ms. Flynn, you have that announcement?
I thought it would be nice just to recognize that one of our residents and town meeting members, Ryan Newell, was appointed as the chief of police in Southborough. So wanted to extend our congratulations.
So, that's great. we grow them here and we ship them out and let them work somewhere else. That's okay. Anyways, Mr. Mizuka, do you have any announcements to go along with that?
I do. Just work through my town manager's report. One item, I just wanted to update the board and thank you for your continued support on the strategic plan project and the last round of community engagement that you requested we do. So far, we've received over 2,051 items of feedback from the residents from the surveys that went out in the mail. That includes both mailed back surveys and online matters. There's been, as for online engagements, there's been 2,750 engagements with getinvolvedshrewsbury.com. So this final push is really bringing a lot more information back that will help us inform the plan as we move into the month of October and finalize things. So that's really good news.
Okay, that's it. Did anybody else have any other announcements they wanted to make?
I just have one.
Yeah, sure.
Just want to extend a congratulatory word to the organizers of the Spirit of Shrewsbury. It was this past weekend. It was really back in full force, like it was, before COVID had hit with the parade and a great expo at the Oak Middle School on Saturday. I just wanted to congratulate all the volunteers who make that happen.
Thank you. Okay, next item is our public comment period. We didn't have anybody sign up for that ahead of time, so we won't be having anything under that item. Our next order of business is the issuance of a proclamation to Melissa Hollenback to recognize her efforts in establishing and managing the Shrewsbury Farmers Market. Many of you know, but many of you might not know, that Ms. Hollenback was instrumental in organizing and running the farmers market since its inception, and she's decided to, it's kind of funny, take on a full-time job, but this one actually getting paid for it, right? You're getting paid for this one, right? Anyways, she's done a great job, and she's just can't handle both of them at the same time, and something had to give, and so she's going to move on, and we thought that it's been so popular and you did such a good job that the board would like to recognize you for your work and thank you for everything that you've done in regards to that. I know that the residents appreciate it, and you did a great job, and so Ms. Cassavant has a proclamation, so if you'd like to come up here.
I thought I was going to have to prepare something. I thought I was going to have to do something.
You don't have to do anything.
Thank you.
We're just really
Oh, this is
excited
wonderful. Thank you.
and just want to read this so that people watching at
Okay.
home, all 5 of them, can work.
Excuse me, Beth, maybe you should, yeah, people can hear it.
Here, we'll hear it. It'll pick up. The town of Shrewsbury and its community greatly benefited from the work of Melissa Hollenback to both establish and manage the Shrewsbury Farmers Market beginning in the spring of 2014. And whereas farmers markets help to promote local small businesses and build community connections amongst community members, and whereas Melissa expanded the vision of what a farmers market can be by integrating programs that supported those most vulnerable in the town and region and civic engagement. And whereas Melissa has established a program that will be a fixture of the community for years to come, clearly leaving her mark on the town. Be it resolved that the Shrewsbury Select Board congratulates Melissa Hollenback for her extraordinary contributions to the Shrewsbury community as a whole. In testimony thereof, we have signed our names officially and caused the seal of the town of Shrewsbury to be affixed to the 27th day of September in the year of 2022. And
Thank you.
this is very formal, but informally, the market has been an amazing resource and something that so many people in the community look forward to. And I know you've moved it from place to place and you've grown it into what it is today. And we're all so grateful for all of the work that you put into it. I've seen you personally, like literally sweating buckets on those Wednesdays, or like waiting for severe weather, which
Yes.
always happens on a Wednesday
Yes.
between 2:30 and 6:30.
Yeah.
So really, thank you for everything that you've done. We're really looking forward to being able to continue. I know the manager's going to speak a little bit about being able to continue the work that you've done and carry on that tradition that the community really appreciates.
And all I wanted to say is, at town meeting, when we were proposing this, I said then, I just want to shop at the market, and I still do, and I did. So, I'm really grateful for the town for being able to move it forward, so I can continue to shop.
Well, thank you for doing that. Melissa, we know that you do a lot more than just the farmer's market, so
Do you want me to send
we're letting you walk away from the farmer's market, but all that other stuff you do with the recycling and all that other stuff, we're not giving you a pass on that. So, make sure you stick around, okay? But thank you for everything you do, and thank you for keeping that going, because it's a lot of work. I know people who are familiar with farmers market know how much work it is, and I'm not sure all the residents in town know how much work it is to keep it going. So thank you very much. It's a long time to keep something like that going, so thank you very much. Kevin, did you want to?
Yes, so we just take the opportunity while we celebrate Missy to let everyone know that the town, the entire force of the town government will pick up the load that Missy's carried alone on her back over the last 10 years, and we'll be managing the farmers market through town offices, so it will be something that continues as it says in the proclamation, and we'll be very proud to do that, and we'll be engaging with the vendors and working with everyone over the coming months to continue the tradition and the success that's been brought to us.
So you could do it, and now it takes the whole town to do it, so. Great. But thank you again for all your hard work. Thank you, appreciate it. Okay. Okay, the next order of business is a meeting with Jacob Furman and Nicole Sen, the Shrewsbury High School students. We started, originally we were going to have a discussion back in August, I think, and had some work going back and forth, and finally we made it here tonight. Mr. Rowley's going to be here, and maybe you could tell us how it's come about. This is about disposing of used cooking oil and a program that you get interested in, and you're going to tell us how this might work. And maybe you could introduce yourselves, and we know Mr. Rowley. Might want to introduce the other gentleman.
Assistant Superintendent Joe Kenny.
Okay. You know what? I never met Joe, to be honest with you, which is kind of amazing. But I guess that's because you're out on the road and I'm always in here, so. It's like, they can't kick me out of here, but they won't let me go down the highway.
They don't let me in either. And,
Okay.
so-
Well, anyways, go ahead.
So I'll just start with a little brief introduction. Nicole Shen, Jacob Furman. We started this discussion back in June as part of a civic action project they had to do, which they have to identify an issue in town and reach out to a leader with to make them aware of the issue. Both of them took it to another level and reached out to me and wanted to come and talk about an idea, a problem, and a solution that they had. So they put together this presentation. We met back in June, myself, Mr. Kenny, a few of our consultants for our sewer system from Weston and Sampson, and they put on a great presentation, which you'll see tonight, and we continued over the summertime talking about this and working on this project, and you've done a number of different tasks to kind of vet it out. So I will turn it over to them. This is their project and their presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Great.
Okay. So Shrewsbury Sanitary Sewer System currently has 169.97 miles of mains, 38 pump stations, 4,330 manholes. Most sewer is treated at the Westboro Regional Facility, with some flow going to the Upper Blackstone in town of Grafton, and it was established in 1963. So the issue with used cooking oil is that right now there are mainly two methods of disposal. Either it gets dumped outside or it gets dumped down the drains. So while the sewer system is great and everything, it still does cause a lot of problems because it clogs our municipal sewers. It reduces efficiency of wastewater treatment plants and harms aquatic life. And I think what a lot of people turn to is also just dumping it outside, which can attract animals and vermin and harms ecosystem and affects food supplies.
So
Currently, one of the main problems I think we have with deciding what to do with the disposal of used cooking oil is if you reference our town website, the recycling center, it advises you to wait for it to cool down and just throw it down the trash, which is both bad for the ecosystem and kind of a waste of material. Later we'll find out that this used cooking oil can actually be transferred into something better and used for energy. Also, what some restaurants are doing is they are using exterior grease traps, which basically traps the grease out of their lines before it enters the sewers. And I think Dan might have better evidence. I think about like 99% effectiveness, right? Like it traps most of it, but maybe like a little bit still slips through, right? And obviously that's a commercial level, not residential, but regardless of what the resident chooses, either down the drain or outside, that's not a great solution. And so what we have for an idea is there are many companies that offer free, timely collections of this used cooking oil, and they go through a process of transesterification, in which all these fats, oils, and greases, they are converted into biodiesel and glycerin. And now this biodiesel is up to standard, and it can be directly used for diesel engines, home heating, whatever diesel purposes you may have. This biodiesel can be substituted for that.
So after a bit of research, we came across this company, Mahoney Environmental. At the moment, they service 5,000 New England restaurants in nearby cities like Framingham and Brockton, I believe. And so we got in contact with them, and basically we've taken the steps forward to kind of progress this, and hoping that we can get one of their collection things at our recycling center.
So if we were to go through with something like this, the company would turn it into biodiesel, which would be non-toxic, biodegradable, clean burning. When you burn it, it reduces emissions by almost 90%. And an interesting statistic is for every unit of energy it would take to create this by their methods, it would return 3.5 equivalent units of the renewable energy. So a very efficient service, you could say. And basically, for our proposal is to create a pilot program with this company for up to 1 year to see how it would work in town. They mainly service businesses, but for them, a town is no different than a business. You just name them a location, they set up this used cooking oil recycling bin, and the town gets to decide how they want to operate it. You just let them know how often it needs to be collected and dumped, and they do everything else for free. Our proposal is to set up one of their 150-gallon recycling bins at the DPW facility. I'm sure many of you guys have driven past it. Me and my family, we personally use a cardboard recycling bin there, and we were thinking that the used cooking oil recycling bin could go right next to it. Ideally, it would just be open for all the times that the cardboard recycling is open, which is just during the weekdays. One thing that we thought of might cause problems is if people are improperly using it, which we would have to downgrade to like a bi-weekly or bi-monthly basis. And, hopefully that doesn't need to happen. Hopefully we don't need to have someone supervising that, because that would create issues, but that's the point of the pilot program. We can see if any issues arise. Hopefully everything is running smoothly. And lastly, this is just the first step in a proposed system to environmental sustainability. As much as us residents would be able to collect and dump in there, the big producers of this is the businesses in town. And even though they do have these exterior grease traps and they're not contaminating our sewer systems, potentially if a protocol was set up for each of these businesses to also have their own recycling bin, a lot more could be collected and transferred into the biodiesel. So we think that, as a town, we talked to Framingham and Brockton. We're a little bit smaller town than them, but we should be able to fill up this 150-gallon bin approximately once a year, which is a pretty good rate, and we think it would be, beneficial for people that, cook a lot, don't know what to do with it. It may be a bit of a hassle, dump it into a glass jar or something when you're driving by. You'd have to dump it out, but I think we definitely do have a lot of environmentally conscious citizens in town who, would take advantage of this program. And eventually, I know a lot of the towns around us have a formal recycling center. And we just have the cardboard recycling at the DPW facility. I know a lot of people want to recycle more than just cardboard and this proposed used cooking oil. Hypothetically, we could set up a established recycling center at this location and have multiple recycling bins for all types of purposes. I know like batteries, aerosol, stuff like that. There's a lot of companies that provide a similar type of free collection service, which we could set up with. But at least just this for now.
Okay, thank you. Commercial, businesses, if they did it, if this company did this, do they charge to pick up the oil?
No. So everything is free of charge. Like they'll go in and they'll replace the exterior grease traps for free and put their own bin in, and they do pickups like whenever you need them, and it's all like no charge.
Do you know if the restaurants that have it picked up now have to pay to have it picked up?
No, so actually where I got the idea from is at this old shoe store I used to work at. We had a restaurant right next door, and I noticed they had this bin outside, and I noticed they would be filling it up, and I asked them, they did not have to pay for the collection. It is beneficial to this company to come and collect it because then they can turn it into biodiesel and sell it. So the more of these that they have, the more benefit it is to them, so they just provide it completely for free of charge.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments? No? Ms. Kip?
Go ahead.
No,
There's
go
some
ahead.
other questions first. I know, Ms. Kelly, you had one. Go ahead.
So what is the anticipation for how often this would need to be collected? I think you mentioned once a year.
Yeah,
That-
the 150-gallon bin is pretty large, and with residents just using it, I wouldn't expect more than twice a year at max, but obviously we can monitor how often it's being used, and if you need a collection early, it's as simple as just a phone call, and they come within 2 to 3 days.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
I don't have a question, I was just going to make a comment.
Okay. So I guess before I read your presentation, I never really gave any thought to where used cooking oil went. So I am glad that you got me thinking in that direction. I know that we're working on a climate action plan right now as a town, and I think this is a piece that I just never considered. Where does used cooking oil from businesses go now? What do they do with it?
so they have the exterior grease traps, which collect 99%. That 1% still goes in our sewers, but that's not that huge of a deal for the most part. I think it ends up being dumped in landfills, which is also not that environmentally friendly.
It still causes the same issues as being dumped outside with like all the vermin and the animals, and also like a potential to leak into the like actual environment.
And it's like untapped energy, right? By just dumping that away, you're missing out on this potential biodiesel. It's kind of like a kill two birds with one stone. You don't contaminate the environment, but then you also use more of this rather than fossil fuel energy, which would be worse for the environment.
I think some facilities do have their own container for recycling. What was interesting about this is we see in our sewer system maintenance, we see, excuse me, a lot of grease issues in pump stations that service only residential areas. And more so than probably the commercial areas.
Yeah, it's certain areas of town, we see it built up into in the sewer system, in the sewer station itself. We also have seen evidence of it in the actual sewer mains itself. So Jared and Nicole's idea, I think, is just a step in the right direction for public outreach and letting folks know in town that this is an issue and creates much more wear and tear on our equipment and our pumping stations, and just creates more issues out in the system that we have to again bring vehicles and equipment out to repair this.
Ms. Miska?
What does it do to the pumps, to the mains? Like what happens when it's in the sewer system? And you say it accumulates in pump stations. What happens?
So, if you're cooking, the fats, oils, or grease or fog, is liquid. It's warm, and dump it down the drain, starts to cool, finally eventually gets to a station or just the sewer line in front of folks' homes or into the street, and then it cools, and then it clumps, and then it becomes more of a solid than a liquid, and then there you go.
So then it coats the pumps, it coats the mains, and ultimately we'll see, it doesn't happen very often, but it will cause a full blockage in a pipe. And then ultimately the relief valve is a manhole, and it will bubble out of the manhole. So that's the worst case.
And that happens in residential areas?
The residential areas, we're fortunate where the town has done a lot of steps to have the grease traps installed at the commercial facilities, but we see it in the pump stations primarily. We'll see it in the wet wells and in the pumping equipment.
And in primarily residential areas? Because the
Right.
grease traps are catching it, at least they should be, in the restaurants and that, right?
Right.
But I know it was a big problem there. I didn't realize in households that it was that big a deal.
Yep, it just creates more maintenance on our end. Luckily, we've kept up with the maintenance on the stations and everything, but it can pose a problem. So, but like I said, regular maintenance and cleaning does take care of the problem. But again, their presentation, again, just would bring it to the forefront and again, let people know that this is an issue.
So if you did do this, sounds like you're interested in trying it. If you did, would you do a PR campaign to let people know that they could bring it and see if it helped?
Yeah, so I envision this being part of a significant public outreach campaign where we educate folks on the sewer system and how to use it appropriately. I know I haven't really done a significant effort in the 3 years I've been here. So, when they came forward with this presentation, which I thought was fantastic, I envisioned this being part of a bigger campaign to really, educate folks on the use of our sewer system.
So what are the next steps for you?
Well, so our hope by coming here was to advocate for this issue, because none of this will work if people don't hear about it and if people don't participate in it. So we were wondering if it was in the community's best interest, if people were interested in this, we would ideally send out mailers to all these people, see if it's going well, and then further steps with potential surveys about policies, maybe restricting down the drain or like commercial businesses, wherever this may lead us.
So what do you think? Are you planning on working with students and getting? It is going to be a program that you can try.
Yes, absolutely. So we came before the board just to get some feedback, to get some support. It's not every day that I have two students that send me an email, this interested, and I will tell you have worked hard to keep this going all summer long, and watching this program, just working on the program. So I absolutely, very interested in continuing this, to implement this and do some significant, public outreach, working with them to, reflect their concerns about the environment. Yep.
I think it's worth a try.
Sure.
Mr. Samia?
Just a quick question. I assume, also works for unused cooking oil, because I think the tendency is people will look in their cabinet, see what's expired, and I think there's not only for the unused, everyone's trying to be more healthy these days too, that the natural tendency is just to pour it down the sink. So I think that this would be a good idea, but also potentially expanding it, because I don't know what else, thinking of basic things, olive oil, salad dressings, things that are similar that could cause the same problems. And I think there's a great awareness, so I appreciate you bringing it forward. It's economically friendly, but environmentally friendly and economically friendly. But also, there are a lot of other areas that none of us think about and just pour things down the drain because it's something we've all been sort of trained to do. That it's not harmful, it's in a bottle, we consume it, but it's not ideal for our systems internally. So it's a really great report, and thanks for coming this evening.
But when people, when the, like Rotary and, kind of, can't think of what we call it, like the service organizations do stuff, is that something that eventually could work in and have a receptacle at one of those places, and people could bring their used oil to those? I mean, you would think after Thanksgiving, I mean, I used to, to be honest with you, I don't, it's a few years, but I don't know. I know we put the stuff back in the can. I suppose it went into it probably went into the trash. I mean, where else would we have gotten rid of the container of the oil? When you're doing a turkey, you're getting rid of a lot of oil at one time.
Yeah.
I would imagine if somebody poured that down the drain, they're putting a lot of oil into a container.
Yeah.
Just something to think about. The holiday season seemed like you'd use a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys thinking already?
May I ask one more question, Mr. Chairman? May I ask, you had mentioned doing a significant campaign. I assume this is related to broader usage or education around the sewer system and not just this particular.
Right, so there's a lot of things that we want to just remind folks about. We were very fortunate during COVID. A lot of sewer systems had major issues with wipes, and we did a campaign and we educated folks, and we had virtually no issues. So it's a lot of those different uses of the sewer system, including this, but you know, those reminders of, you know, it's not just anything that, you know, not anything to be flushed down the drain.
Thank you. May I say one more comment?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman? I just wanted to say thank you. I also learned a lot, and I'm really impressed with your presentation and your skills in presenting and how concise and factual and pointed you were. I know a lot of people professionally that could learn a lot from your style. So thank you very much.
Of course.
You stuck with us. It's been a couple of months you stayed with it.
It'd be a waste to have all this effort and just let it go down the drain.
You know, I'm glad that you were willing to come in and talk to us, because I know originally you wanted to come in and talk in the public comment period, and I think this was a better forum to do it, because we were able to have the exchange, you get your ideas out, you were able to collaborate with Mr. Rowley, and I think it was a lot better. So I commend you for the time you put into it. I commend you, Dan, for seeing an opportunity here, and we look forward to hearing back from you maybe in a few months, 6 months, maybe. You're seniors, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, okay, by the time you graduate, we'd like to have you come back in and report to us and tell us how it's worked out.
Sounds good.
It'd be great. So, thank you for doing that. Sometimes these little things lead to something bigger, and we know what happens when these things aren't taken care of, right? We saw it at White City and a few other places, a much bigger amount of oil going into the pipes. But so, good for you. Good for staying with it, and thanks for coming in. Thanks for working with them. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You all.
That's great.
Thanks. Okay. Next order of business is to review and act to sign the warrant for the October 17th special town meeting. Mr. Mizikar, do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have many members of the team here this evening to help walk through a series of articles that we have for your consideration this evening. So we have one comprehensive presentation, and we're going to start this evening with the first article that we're proposing, which includes amending the animal control section of the general bylaws, so we'd have Animal Control Officer Keith Elms come up. As he's coming up, I'll remind everyone that the meeting we're proposing is for October 17th. Be held at the Oak Middle School. We'll be sending information on the warrant out over the next few days, and then full packets near the end of the first week of October. The process will be traditional for this meeting. On October 6th, the Finance Committee will hold a public hearing on all the warrant articles, and that will be in the main room at the Shrewsbury Public Library, not in their traditional location. We'll mail out those packets on the 7th. The Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board, excuse me, will meet on October 11th to vote article recommendations here in this room. And then the special town meeting will be on the 17th. So plenty of opportunity for public engagement at the Finance Committee on the 6th. And we can move forward in the presentation and start the review of the warrant.
Okay.
So ACO Elms will come up and discuss some changes that he's proposing to the general bylaws.
All right.
Good evening.
Good evening. So, Article 14 of the Shrewsbury Town Bylaws, our dog control law, has not been updated in quite some time, probably decades. I think 1985 was the last significant update I found, other than a few different fee changes. So I have a couple proposals that should take care of the majority of any issues we may run into. The first being Section 5, which deals with disposition of unclaimed dogs. Currently, our town bylaw has it at 10 days. Years ago, the state law changed, which reduced it to 7 days. Therefore, if we reduce our holding period down to 7 days, it's going to result in, reducing any unnecessary fees, kenneling fees owed by the town. Just for example, currently now, if we have an unclaimed dog, it gets held for 10 days, results in a charge of $250 to the town. Bring it down to 7 days to align with the state law, $175. So we'll, reduce fees paid to our kennel by updating that.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so you gotta understand this is coming from a dog lover, right? Does that mean, what happens to the dog after 7 days?
I didn't want to ask that.
What?
So,
want to ask that.
so we don't have.
I'm gonna ask.
So we don't have a kennel here in town. We
I
use the
understand
animal.
that.
We use the Animal Rescue League in Worcester. So, if I pick up a dog and impound it at the Animal Rescue League, if the owner has 7 days to come claim the dog, if the dog is not claimed in that, I'm sorry, the way Shrewsbury has it 10 days. So, if the owner does not show up in 10 days, at that point, myself, as a representative of the town, I transfer ownership of the dog to the Animal Rescue League, and they own the dog from that point out.
Okay, but that didn't answer my question.
They do what they see fit with the dog, which is normally have it seen by a vet and put up for adoption.
Okay, that answers my question.
That's better.
All right. I thought you were gonna say something else. Okay.
No, again, once we transfer ownership,
Okay,
it's
we don't-
out of our hands.
The
So.
responsibility for the dog is
Correct.
not ours, okay?
Correct, yep.
Okay,
So, any other questions on that portion? No?
no,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, the second proposal would be to adopt the entirety of Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 136A through 174F into the general laws and special acts accepted by the town of Shrewsbury, and as well into Article 14. As far as at a state level, all of an animal control officer's authority is derived from these sections in that chapter, and while we do have some of them currently in there, we don't have the entire section, and therefore, updating it to include all the sections of that Chapter 140, it will allow me to a broader authority. For example, there's been a lot of new laws added in the past decade, two of the major ones being Chapter 140, Section 174F, which deals with, animals left in motor vehicles during extreme temperature, hot or cold, and 174E, which deals with tethering and outdoor confinement. So the way we have it now, unless we adopt, the entirety, those two laws in particular, which are, a large majority of calls I get, depending on the season, those can kind of only be enforced by the police department. But by just adopting that entire section, which, looking into it, virtually every other town at least in this area has, it would allow me to just enforce that entire chapter.
So it would free up the offices. You could handle those situations without having an officer come out. Is that
Correct.
okay?
Correct. Just because we don't have these bylaws, these state laws adopted into our bylaws, I don't have me being not sworn law enforcement, I don't have the authority to enforce those particular state laws.
If anybody has questions, jump in.
Could you explain a little bit more what this adoption would add that it doesn't currently? So you said it's for dogs left in cars in hot weather and tethering. So can you expand on that a little bit more? Like what?
Sure. So as of now, just to simplify it, what I can legally enforce is what's in our town bylaws. And the few, special, in our general laws and special acts accepted by the town of Shrewsbury, there are there's a handful of state laws we've adopted that I can enforce, but just because we've added new ones, or not we, the state has added new laws to that chapter, until we adopt those, I can't enforce them.
So currently, in order for the town to take action on it, there has to be a law enforcement officer, but by
Correct.
adopting these, it would allow you to take action on them?
Correct.
Okay.
Jump in.
Jack,
Just will point the board to the bottom of the slide here where it says tied to strategic plan. So this is our first initiative, although the plan is only in draft form and we're still receiving public feedback. We wanted to take the opportunity as we're going into town meeting to begin to tie all of our actions and changes and decision points into the strategic plan. So what we've done this evening for each and every warrant article is provided the draft strategic outcome area that we feel that's associated with most directly. And in some cases, we're able to drill down into some of the sub-strategy categories or further into the strategic outcome area, as we have in this one. So it falls under the exceptional strategic outcome area in providing smart, reliable, and robust municipal services and utilities. So you'll see that throughout this evening. It's color-coded and will be associated with the scheme that we use ultimately. Again, subject to change because it's still draft, but trying to both get in the habit of doing this and just be more transparent about why we're taking particular actions.
All right. You got that? All right.
Yep,
Thank you.
So Article 2 is a proposal that has been researched by Justin Dobson and made a proposal through his work with the Commission on Disabilities. And DPW Director Highland has also provided support with some details of what this proposal is this evening. So I'll turn it over to the two of them, and they can talk about what they're proposing through Article 2.
Want me to start?
Yeah.
For the record, Jeff Howland, DPW Director, and with me Justin Dobson, who's technically our head of the cemetery division, or at least mans the cemetery garage. But he's also very passionate on the Commission on Disabilities. Article 10 originally started as Justin's looking at the penalties and violations in which by statute we're allowed to go from $100, which is in our Article 10, to $300, and I'll let him explain that shortly. But when I saw that they were doing this, I also looked at our entire Article 10 of the general bylaws, which is our handicap parking, which is not in conformance or compliance with 521 CMR, which is the standards of the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. Our bylaws are significantly less stringent than the Mass AAB, and if Justin was going to go forward with his proposal, I felt that it was best that we also look at the entire bylaw. And so the first part of it will be also to modify sections A through D of the bylaw to bring it in conformance with 521 CMR.
Okay. So as Jeff explained, I've been providing staff support to the Commission on Disabilities over the last several months, and one of the initiatives we've been discussing over the course of our last few meetings is the adoption of a provision of Mass General Law, which is MGL Chapter 40, Section 22G. So I'd like to discuss that first before mentioning the increase from 100 to 300, because it gives a little bit of background and context as to why we're looking for this increase. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 22G would allow a town or city that has a duly established Commission on Disabilities to set aside money that is collected through fines from handicap parking fines to the Commission on Disabilities. That money would be only able to be expended from a special interest-bearing account that would accrue from year to year upon the recommendation of the Commission on Disabilities, and it would be subject to further approval by the Board of Selectmen, town manager, or some other financial procedure that the board would come up with. The reason why we're looking for this increase from 100 to 300 is the bylaw currently requires only a $100 fine, and that bylaw was adopted in 1984. So if you run some numbers in terms of inflation, $100 in 1984 is about $285 today. So I think our line of thinking is if town meeting members were inclined to support a $100 fine in 1984, they may be willing to support a $300 fine today because it's only $14 more than what the fine would be, keeping in accordance with the inflation rate. The reason for the increase is we're looking for $100 of the total fine amount. So if we were to increase from 100 to 300, 100 would still go to local receipts where it goes currently. So that way the town is kept whole. There's no fiscal impact with respect to the town's revenue. And the additional $200 would be allocated to that parking fund that I mentioned. That money could be used in a variety of ways. So looking at what other Commission on Disabilities who have these funds, they've used it to pay for speakers to come to, town hall or to the public library to do presentations on disability-related matters. Other communities have used it to pay for assistive technology like magnifiers at the public libraries. Some of the coastal communities have used it to purchase wheelchairs that are accessible to beaches. So there are a variety of items that the funds could be used for. In terms of the number of commissions that have these funds, so there's 351 municipalities, 156 have Commission on Disabilities, and only 57 of that 156 have this type of parking fund. There's only several, I believe it's 8 specifically in the Worcester County region. So I think by establishing this fund, we would be showing our commitment to improving accessibility in town. I think it's a progressive action that puts us at the forefront of municipalities here in Worcester County. And in terms of the current revenue that we receive at that $100 fine amount, the Shrewsbury Police Department on average between fiscal year 2008 and fiscal year 2020 has issued 33 handicap parking fines annually, so that would translate to $3,300 a year. With this recommended increase, it'd be $9,900 on average per year, $3,300 still going to the town, and the additional $6,600 going to the commission. So that money could be used to remove barriers to accessibility, or other communities have started a competitive grant application process where community organizations can apply for funding to further accessibility initiatives. So there's a lot of various uses for these dollars. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes.
Just a quick question. Thanks for that explanation. Procedurally, on the second bullet down, so the town meeting will approve to increase the fine amount from 100 to 300, but it would be after that, our vote to allocate the 100, 200, right?
Correct. So I've checked in with the Assistant Director of Community Services at Mass Office on Disability. town meeting vote is only required to amend the bylaw, which specifies the 100 versus 300. And then beyond that, it would be up to the Board of Selectmen to adopt that 22G parking fund, so MGL Chapter 40, Section 22G. And you'd be able to specify the split. So if the board were to say 150, 150, 100, 200, whatever is the board.
Okay, so that in itself is not part of the amendment to the bylaw?
No, so
Okay.
we're just focusing on the amendment to the bylaw, and then the subsequent step would be the adoption of that MGL.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Justin, did the chief have any opinion on this?
So I have not consulted with the chief personally. In terms of operational changes, there would be no changes. I mean, I don't think we're requesting anything additional from the police department. We're just looking at, the current fines that they issue and increasing that amount.
I'm sorry.
I can jump in there too. So I've talked to the chief about it, and he didn't object to anything. We talked about a number of different scenarios as far as there's an option that you could use funds for particular enforcement activities, and he wasn't very fond of that, but that's something that we can work out in the future.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Use these funds for that?
For enforcement.
So I can expand on that. So the town of Burlington has had a successful model where they will utilize funds from this account to essentially generate additional revenue to go back into that account. So let's say the police detail rate per hour is $50 per hour. If you're able to issue one ticket per hour or one ticket every couple of hours, you're generating more revenue than what you're expending on those police details. So they've taken a very aggressive action in terms of paying for police details that will specifically focus on enforcement of handicap parking. I don't think that we'd be able to implement something like that here just because they have the Burlington Mall and it's, you sit there all day and watch for handicap parking.
Well, how does that benefit the Commission on Disabilities?
Because the additional revenue that they're getting from issuing the handicap fines, a portion would be funneled back to the Commission on Disability. So if they're spending $50 per hour and they're getting $200 per hour back, they're creating additional revenue beyond what was initially deposited into their account.
I don't know, I have to think about that one.
Yeah, so that's the point that Mr. Mizikar was discussing.
I like the idea of raising the fees for that. I think there's a lot that can be done with those funds for the commission. I think there's always stuff that can be done with that money for the Commission on Disabilities and people with disabilities. So I appreciate all the work you did with it. It looks like you really studied it.
Thank you.
So be very interested to see what people at town meeting would say. But I think attitudes have changed about people who park in those handicap spaces who shouldn't be, for like 20 years ago. So I think it's a good idea, and I think you're right. 1984 to now, I don't see a lot of people doing it, but I'm sure that I know it happens. But I think people who are going to do it are going to do it, whether it's a $100 fine or a $300 fine. So.
And I think in an ideal world, we get $0 every year from this. We don't want people parking in handicap parking spaces.
No,
it's turning a negative into a positive.
It would be good if they didn't. But if they're going to do it, I think if there's a benefit that can be had from it, then I think it could be money that's put to good use. So I commend you for taking the time on it. I think it's a good idea. Anybody else have any?
I just, I really appreciate the idea that the additional $200 would be allocated to removing those barriers to accessibility. I think it's really important that, it's one of those things like, we need to focus in our strategic plan, to be a thriving community, we need to make sure that it's accessible for everybody. So I really appreciate the increase in the fine would go towards removing those barriers. Thank you for your work on this. I think this is really important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, hey, can I just, one question?
Yep.
When you said some of our stuff isn't up to what the state statutes are?
So currently, our bylaw
Right.
is antiquated,
Well,
but 521 CMR is the current state statute or state regulations, guidelines for the Accessibility Board.
so by us not being current, does that mean we're supposed to be there and we're just not?
Well,
Or we haven't?
on paper, we are not. But I can honestly say that every project that's probably been submitted to the town of Shrewsbury for decades
Okay.
meets 521 CMR.
All right, so we're making sure that we're on the same page, we're just making sure we're on the same page.
That's correct.
So when you are adjusting it, I think one other time you did something like this, and you're doing it so that every time the law changes or the CMRs change, we don't have to go back to town meeting, it's automatically gonna tie into it?
That is correct.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about this, and we're always gonna stay current.
Right. So for example, under our current bylaw, if you have 500 parking spaces, only 6 need to be handicapped accessible,
Yeah.
or handicapped parking spaces. Under 521 CMR, 9 have to be.
Okay, and if they changed that CMR and it's 11, then automatically our bylaw is gonna mirror that.
That is correct.
So we don't have to worry about 3 years from now going, oh geez, we're behind.
Right, so that's one of the things we want to do with each, so there's A, B, C, and D is really to make it more, less wordy,
Yeah.
and just refer back to 521 CMR.
Right, so whenever it's updated, it's automatically
That's
updated
correct.
on us. Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just as a quick question, as a technical matter, do we tie it to 521, or do we add additional language or any successor rule or regulation?
But we will tie it to 521 as the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board updates theirs. They just update certain sections within 521 CMR.
So if it's superseded, we'd have to go back to this. Okay. If 521 were superseded by a subsequent CMR.
If it got superseded, then yes, but the way the Architectural Access Board has been functioning in the past, as they update it, they keep the same 521 CMR. They just might change subsection 7.04 or something like that.
All right, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Fitzpatrick, next.
Article 3 is cleaning up a technical error that was found in the Attorney General's review of the creation of the Town of Shrewsbury tree bylaw, which was done at the annual town meeting. We had cited a $500 for each offense within the general law, or within our bylaw. However, the general laws limit that to $300. So they struck that entire section from our bylaw, so we'll just need to add a section issuing or allowing for a fine of up to $300 for any violation of the tree bylaw.
So that covers that one.
That's it. Yep. Article 4 is a series of budget adjustments that I'll briefly talk about. They're subject to change, as it says on the slide this evening, just because there could be changes, additions, other projects that compete for the same dollars that we're reviewing this evening. So as we've discussed with the board, and as we do each and every year, we look at the revenue model that we use at the annual town meeting to develop the operating budget and other items that need funded. And two major things happen after the annual town meeting. One of those is normally the passage of the state budget. So we use the House of Representatives numbers when we go to the annual town meeting. The final budget was more favorable to the town, providing more revenue. And then also a new growth is certified through June 30th by the assessor's office. So both of those two things have brought additional revenue into the model that we're able to consider for projects. We've tied all of these investments and changes with any of that new revenue into one-time expenses for the most part, except for whenever we're trying to manage the tax rate and keep it as low as possible, which is the case in the first item. So the first item that we'd consider to adjust the budget is to increase it by $106,937.50. This is funding for the recent borrowing, or actually borrowing that you'll consider later this evening through the signing of bonds for the police station. That amount is due in interest. And this has been exempted from the levy, or eligible for exemption from the levy, but because we have this additional taxation, these dollars available to us, rather than not raise the levy to its full limit, we propose the use of the unrestricted levy to cover these interest costs for fiscal year 23. It's likely to save 2 or 2.5 cents on the tax rate ultimately, and provide savings on every tax bill over what otherwise would have occurred. We have, again, other members of the team here this evening can answer any questions. We'd be proposing to transfer funds from expense line items, from personnel line items to expense line items for contract cleaning services within public buildings, transfer various funds that are not needed within personnel line items throughout the Department of Public Works general operating budget to fleet maintenance, to move forward with the full creation of the fleet maintenance division and funding a foreman position within that entity. We are looking to transfer funds from the IT department line item to the town manager's line item, where we have funded a analyst position that's providing support for all of our business systems. So this position was just originally budgeted within the IT budget and now is being shifted into town managers. So it's no net increase in total employees, but just how we fund it. For the library, you need to make a budget transfer from operating expenses to salaries to cover costs. Again, town meeting controls at the personnel and expense line item our bottom line, so we need their approval to make the shift. And then with the additional revenues that we've identified, we would look to increase the Finance Committee's reserve fund by $75,000, and the primary purpose for that is to handle any inflationary pressures that we may see throughout the entire course of this fiscal year, which we are already facing in several departments, especially when it comes to supplies, chemicals, and various services that we purchase throughout the course of the year. So in a nutshell, that's the changes that we propose to make to the operating budget.
I have a question.
Yep.
Could you go back over your thinking around the debt service piece and not taxing up to not going up to the full levy, and how that would impact taxpayers?
Sure. So we've excluded through the ballot question all the revenue that's required to pay for any debt service associated with the police station project. So that means that because we've issued the final amount of debt, and there's $106,937.50 in interest that's due this fiscal year, we're able to increase the tax rate to raise those dollars. However, I think it's probably, in the vision of this board, as we've talked about, to not raise the tax rate if we don't have to help manage individual tax bills. And by using non-exempted tax levies, so the general taxation, those dollars would be raised anyhow. We are not raising additional dollars. We're just using dollars that are already available to us that aren't excluded. So it will keep tax bills lower. It will keep the tax rate lower for this fiscal year, where we otherwise could have raised it.
Okay, thank you.
We can just go ahead. Yep. So Article 5 is to transfer funds into the General Stabilization Fund. This is subject to change Again, with the additional revenues that have been identified since we went to the annual town meeting, we'd propose to add at least $47,810 to the general stabilization fund as we kind of true up numbers between now and the hearing with the Finance Committee. This is subject to change, but this meets with our financial policies of maintaining strong reserves and effective long-range planning if we ever need these funds in an emergency situation.
Question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So this would bring us to where in our financial policies? We say we want to be at a certain percentage.
Yep.
How close does this bring us?
So we are currently, we have a policy level of 5% of the annual operating budget. And with the operating budget revised, as we've discussed this evening, this would bring us to 2.79% of that total. We're currently at $3,811,000. This would bring us to $3,858,810. So it's just another opportunity to continue to build that amount, keep pace with the current budget and the changes that we're making at the annual town meeting. We normally make that big contribution in the spring using free cash. That's our traditional model. In the past, we have added to the stabilization fund when the stabilization fund in the fall when the opportunity is presented, like it's done this evening.
Thank you.
Article 6 and 7. 6, 7, and 8. So these are miscellaneous items that we are requesting funding from the town through taxation for. The three articles include matching or providing $7,110 to supplement a state earmark that Senator Moore and Representative Kane were able to garner through the state budget process in order to provide comprehensive NFPA standard firefighter physical. So this is a more comprehensive physical for those firefighters with a full cancer screening to baseline and document them, given the high rate of cancer within firefighting community. We received $24,500 from the state, and this is again $7,110 to supplement that. Article 7 is $20,000 to augment insurance funds to replace a cruiser that was totaled earlier this calendar year. So we insure our cruisers at actual cash value rather than replacement costs on our insurance policies. That's because we use them for 3 years and then they're pretty beat up and it's a short life, so it's a lower insurance cost for us to do that. Since we turn them over 3 years, that's what makes the most sense. In the rare occasion when a newer cruiser is involved in an accident and totaled, we don't always have sufficient funding to replace the new cruiser, and that is definitely more of a challenge now as we're moving to hybrid cruisers. They're a little bit more expensive than the standard gasoline model, so we need $20,000 to supplement the $33,000 that we're getting from insurance.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? Sure. On Article 6, the additional funding for the firefighter physicals, will this allow us to do these complete physicals for every firefighter on staff?
Yes.
Okay, and so currently the state funding that we have does not allow us to do every single firefighter,
That's
and
right.
this will? Okay,
right.
thank you, that's great,
Yep.
thanks.
And finally, Article 8, we're seeking funding to fund a unified dispatching, staffing, and operations study. As we've discussed, the new police station has sufficient facilities to be able to dispatch both police and fire operations out of one facility. Currently, we dispatch fire from the fire headquarters and police from the police headquarters. And as we work to build an appropriate model to govern, oversee, and operate that type of aspect of our organization moving forward, we want to avoid some pitfalls that a lot of other cities and towns fall into whenever they manage dispatching operations out of either a police or fire department, because those are two co-equal public safety branches that have very diverse ways of managing radio communications and dispatching operations. So by bringing a consultant in, setting up standard operating procedures and practices, and developing a staffing study that's staffing levels that are appropriate for our size town, given our call volume, we feel that we'll put ourselves in the best position to make the right decision on how we'll operate unified dispatching once we move in that direction. All right. So, Keith, you want to come up and talk about Article 9 briefly? That's okay with you?
Yep.
All right. Yep.
Good evening, everybody. Keith Baldinger, Assistant Director of Public Works. So Article 9 is to add funding to an FY23 capital improvement project at Flora Street School to replace 5 HVAC units that could actually cover about 15,000 square feet of the building. They're original to the building, 25 years old. And the original funds weren't enough that we requested for the project. It's about a $320,000 project. So this additional $185,000 plus an incentive from Selco will get us to the point we'll be able to make these replacements next summer.
It was a $325,000 project?
Yeah. And it's the 25-year-old units. Believe it or not, Floral Street School has the oldest HVAC system out of all of our buildings, because the others have all are either newer or have been updated. And the units currently, they're natural gas heat with regular air conditioning condensing units, and they'll all be replaced with a heat pump system, fully electrified, not using any fossil fuels. And it's the way it was installed in the building originally makes it quite a difficult process to change it, not just rooftop units that we're popping off, it's all inside the building. So.
Can I ask a question? So with the conversion to heat pumps from a fossil fuel source, will this make it less expensive to operate?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Yep. More efficient in general.
Thank you.
One quick question. Do any of our other buildings use the heat pumps right now?
We have small units in some areas. For example, there's areas of the high school administration office that has a few. Parker Road has a few in part of the building, that building. The police station, the old police station right now, actually mostly is heated and cooled by heat pumps that were installed 4 or 5 years ago by our staff. So it's similar to it's like the mini split systems that you see in homes now. This is much larger commercial version, includes fresh air and everything.
Thank you.
So good.
I'm sorry, may I ask another
Sure.
question?
Sure.
You just mentioned fresh air, so will this, as far as like ventilation and things go with, what we saw over the last few years, the pandemic and, air handling and things like that, will that improve what is over what the current system is?
Currently these spaces are fully fresh air, filtered air, meets ASHRAE standards as they are. Our issues aren't the fresh air problem. Our issue is that they're dual units, they heat and cool. So some of them now only heat, some of them now only cool. So it causes, obviously, discomfort. The fresh air part of it's the same. Still be putting the same volume of air in the building with the new system too.
All right, thank you.
Good. Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Article 10 is a new initiative that will provide many benefits on the finance and administration and mission-oriented departments, and I'd like to have Principal Assessor Ruth Anderson come up and describe this. And just want to acknowledge Ruth's efforts on this project. We were looking for a project manager for this around about the time she came on board with the town, and she was voluntold that she's going to take the lead, and she's brought us here, and we're so grateful because it's not the most exciting public-facing project, but it's really important to how we kind of operate internally. So Ruth, thank you.
Thank you. So for the record, I'm Ruth Anderson, and I'm serving as your principal assessor. So communities are facing challenges with addressing across the Commonwealth. And one of the great benefits of living in Massachusetts is we have these towns that used to be a bunch of little tiny villages. and which is great for our history, but the problem is now we have streets that have the same name or similar names, and there's out of order numbering because I don't like that number. I'm going to put this number on my house. And then we have common driveways that are essentially private streets with no unique identifier. 935 Main Street's a big topic of conversation around here. You've got 26 units on a driveway. So in Shrewsbury, there's never been a central table that's been managed by one specific department. So there's inconsistencies that have continued and led to potential public safety issues and confusion when developers are proposing new projects. For instance, we have Walnut Street, Walnut Place, Walnut Hill Lane, and Walnut Drive. So imagine the challenges if you have an EMS driver who doesn't live in Shrewsbury and gets a 911 call and says, I'm on Walnut and I need help. So departments that utilize the addresses have developed their own workflows and procedures to assign and collect addressing information in ways that are optimized for that specific department, but then the challenges arise because the department's programs don't play nice together. So the need to update these processes was identified a few years ago. A working group was created to develop policies and a routine process to avoid future challenges. And in the last year, we've used $7,000 in ARPA funding to prepare a needs assessment, which was completed in January. Following the recommendations received, we've begun to implement some of those changes, but we've only scratched the surface. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. So this article that's before the board asks to raise and appropriate $100,000 for the development of a primary address table, along with parameters for future address assignment, utilizing a consulting firm to assist with identification of problem areas in the current process in Shrewsbury, as well as development of new processes to be implemented, creating a system that works for all departments, specifically assessing, building, DPW, the town clerk, and Selco. Happy to answer any questions.
I have a lot of questions tonight, I'm sorry. Will there be, after the implementation or the development of this system, would there then be an annual cost associated with maintaining it, or subscription cost or anything?
So the plan is to have the table developed, work with this consulting company, and then once we have it, we will also have the processes in place to maintain it ourselves.
Okay, so there wouldn't be additional
Correct.
annual fees or anything associated with keeping it current?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So is this going to help? I think I know the answer to the question, but I'm going to ask anyways. I don't know if you were here when person on Stoneland Road was tearing a house down, and it was like number 9, but the gas company had its number 11, and I think the light department had something else. And it was all the same house.
Yep.
And
So
it-
that's
And I think the registry had it something else. And it took months, it took months to get it squared away.
Well-
So that is what this hopefully is going to, one of the things that this is going to straighten out, right?
So part of the process will be for those things to be identified and then to determine what the best course of action is. We've been able to fix a few things along the way. For instance, I think it's coming up shortly before this board, Spring Street School. In my system, which is the assessing database, it's 119. They use 123. So when they go to pull a permit to do whatever, the contractor says it's 123 Spring Street, which does not exist anywhere. So that would seem to be an easy fix, but because it's town-owned property. But if you think about, if you have a couple houses that are out of order, then you're dealing with people who have to change their mailing and their bank, so the part of this process and this project will be to identify how best to rectify those things.
Okay, so those are the kinds of things it's gonna
Yep.
help fix. Definitely needs to be done.
Yes.
Great, thanks. Anybody have any questions?
Let me ask you a
Yes.
question. How many other towns in Massachusetts, on average, have a PAT, primary address table? I mean, is that pretty standard and we're an outlier because we don't have it? Or is it because of our size that manual processes to manage it are not effective?
I'm going to ask if I can either defer to Kristen Loss on this one. She was involved in this project before I came on board.
Yeah, and I also might defer to David Snowden, who's in the building, but I'll try to answer best I can. We know the city of Worcester is currently going through this process right now. They put out an RFP, and they're currently going through this. I'm not aware of the number of Massachusetts towns, but if you go to any town in the south or in the west, they were incorporated in a much later time than we were, and they actually set up this system before they started addressing properties. So it's really good standard practice to have it, and for us to be able to operate in an effective, efficient way for our residents. We feel that this is very necessary at this time, but we can certainly get you more data if you'd like on what other municipalities in the Commonwealth have this system.
I was just curious. I thought that might help the cause.
I do know that
Business
other
case for this.
communities are facing the same problems that we are and trying to figure out the best course of action. So either developing something in-house or creating their own policies and getting it approved at town meeting, or the assessor and building and your mapping company working together. So Shrewsbury's big enough that we think that it's in order to do it right the first time, let's, get somebody in here that's got more experience than we do on it.
Absolutely. May I ask one more question? I think
Sure.
you've done a great job of outlining sort of the need for operational efficiency. You piqued my interest with the Walnut Street or Walnut example, and certainly from a public safety perspective. Can you just help me understand how this process would actually improve that scenario that you described?
So there would essentially be a gatekeeper. So Joe Developer wants to come in and put in a subdivision with 4 streets on it. They can't pick them. So there would be a process so that we didn't have new streets that were too similar to existing streets. This is all draft
Yep.
language.
I was actually referring to the EMS
Oh, okay.
example. Would this process actually help that situation where
I don't know if do you mean changing street names?
that, to me, would that be a possible outcome if we were to identify that we just had too many overlapping names that we might consider change?
It's certainly a possibility. It would be really the Board of Selectmen as the road commissioners to vote and
Select
approve
board.
that. So, excuse me, Select Board, yes. And a lot of public outreach. So that may be one of the recommendations that comes out of this study is you have too many road names that are too similar. We feel that it's a detriment to the public good. We recommend that you make the following changes. And also, as Ruth indicated, in the future, we would not be having those overlaps for future type of roads.
Actually, way before computers, when we were working on the deeds, we found back in the 30s, 20s, 30s, there were a whole bunch of street names that got changed because when they were private streets and they made them public, they were either named the same or they were too close to other streets. And the selectmen, or whoever it was, I forgot, I think it was selectmen, they changed probably 30, 40 street names because of the same thing, that the name sounded too familiar. Hapgood Way was not Hapgood Way, I just happen to remember that one. They changed the names. So it does happen. Because the names, they're too familiar. I mean, they're too similar.
Right.
So if they could do it back then, I'm sure we could do it now, but that screws everything up all the way back to the registry, right?
Yep.
When they do that, it's a big deal.
It is and it isn't. I mean, not to get too far off course, but if I live on Walnut Street and the town changes that and then I sell my property, my deed is going to say such and such a house on Anderson Lane, formerly known as
Right.
Walnut Street.
But the important thing is when somebody tries to find your house and it's an emergency, they go to Rice Street instead of Rice Road.
Exactly.
Right. But they do it. I mean, we've done it in Shrewsbury. I know they do it other places too, but anyways. Are you done with this part? Because I have a question before you go. Well, I think.
I don't know, am I done with this part?
I don't know. Are you
I
done with
serve with
this
the
part?
pleasure.
No, is this done? Well, I had asked you the other day about, after this, when the override went through in the police station and all that, there was obviously a big jump in people's taxes.
Yep.
And so people who are paying, what do you call it? When they're paying through the bank and they're.
Escrow.
Escrow, right.
Yep.
So when the escrow got adjusted, some people saw big jumps, which were tied into the timing of when their escrows were readjusted. It really didn't indicate what their real taxes and mortgage are going to be.
Right.
And you started to explain it to me one day when I was at the counter. It had something to do with the timing of when their escrow was adjusted by the bank, and they can you explain that? They can talk to the bank and say, hey,
Yep.
go back and look at this?
So when you're, any changes in any tax bill show up on the third and fourth quarter only. Everybody knows that, who's paid taxes in Shrewsbury for any amount of time. The problem comes in with a bank who holds an escrow account who isn't familiar with how that works. So fiscal '22 in particular, people saw on average a $1,000 increase in their tax bill. That $1,000 was not spread out over all 4 tax bills. It was only spread out over the last 2. So it was a $500 increase on the February bill and $500 on the May bill. If a bank were to look at that and say, oh, they went up by $500 in Shrewsbury's quarterly, that's a $2,000 annual increase. So then they try to adjust the escrow account to cover the $2,000. Which is not accurate. It's a $1,000 increase for the year, not 2.
Right. So if somebody had that happen to them, they can call their bank and explain that to them and probably get the escrow, that amount changed?
They should certainly contact their bank and find out. There's a lot of mitigating factors. There could be a shortage that the bank wants to get caught up, so they're going to collect a little bit extra. But they should call and find out how their escrow is being calculated, and then communicate to the bank the annual tax amount that's come, over the last several years, so that the bank can see that it went from $4,000 to $5,000 to $5,500 or whatever, and then the bank can make sure that they're not over collecting.
Right, they should, if they saw a big jump like that, they should at least try, because I have people, their tax bill went up $600, but their escrows went up $2,000.
Yeah, yep. It happens all the time, and in my experience, it's banks or mortgage companies that aren't local, so they don't understand the timing that we're on a fiscal year and things like that.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that helps some people out. Because it won't get straightened out until the next time they adjust it, right? If they otherwise.
Right, so, I mean, the taxpayer should get the money back. They can't have
Right,
hold
or they
too much
readjust
in
it.
there. Right.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
But if you don't have to be paying an extra $400 a month, then.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Sure.
Okay.
Anything else?
Anyone else?
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Article 11 is the continuation of a project that we've been working on for the past several years to deal with the challenges associated with running out of space at the Mountain View Cemetery. So DPW leadership will be up to walk the board through this proposal and how we'll work through the future aspects of the project.
Good evening. Article 11 is to fund the design of the, and I'm hesitant to use Mountain View Cemetery Phase 2 or Section 2, but the cemetery proposed on at 65 Prospect Street. We don't know the name of the cemetery yet. Could be Mountain View, but, a little timeline. In 1976, the town purchased the property known as 65 Prospect Street. And at that same time, a committee was set up by town meeting to study what the use of that property should be used for. There were multiple uses proposed, including putting some 200 units by the Shrewsbury Housing Authority on that property in the original building and subsequent buildings. In 1979, the committee that was established went to town meeting and gave a report that recommended that the town meeting designate a portion of 65 Prospect Street for a future cemetery expansion. It was known right from the beginning in 1976 that a cemetery was going to be needed at some point. We are at the point now where we are only selling graves on an as-needed basis, and unfortunately that is when somebody actually passes away, then we sell them a grave. We do not sell graves to somebody unless they are deceased, unless you already own one, because of the lack of graves that are available within the existing Mountain View Cemetery. In 2019, an article was brought forward to town meeting to develop a concept plan for 65 Prospect Street for the cemetery, looking at I believe it was 100 years worth of selling of graves. Town hired BSC to do a concept plan. We had several, unfortunately, virtual public meetings on the several concepts, in which the concept that was chosen for this is more, if you've seen Mount Auburn Cemetery, it's more of, it's not a traditional cemetery like Mountain View is, where there's just rows and rows and rows of graves. It's more passive, in which there's trees and pathways, and some graves are sort of hidden into the landscape. So we've received a concept, and there should be a map of what that concept would look like. And it will be for the next, I believe it's 50 years worth of graves in what we're calling Phase 1. And that includes a new access drive off of Prospect Street, a new cemetery building on that area, sales office, potentially the relocation of the garage for the cemetery, but it also, Phase 1 of the plan that we have also shows a new parking area for Prospect Park, which currently there is not parking for Prospect Park. So we're looking at, for the design, of $200,000 for the design for this Phase 1. And the design will be good enough for bid documents, which will be back later in the spring.
Okay.
That's it.
Questions?
So the design that we're looking at would not encompass the entire Prospect Park property, correct? It would only cover a portion of it, and
That is correct.
And could you tell me the number, again, the number of years that it would be anticipated that this portion of the project would be able to accommodate burials?
We are anticipating 50 years worth of burials
Okay.
in this first phase. And this first phase is intended to be multiple different types of graves, from urns to traditional burials, though the trend in the industry is to get away from traditional burials.
Okay, so another question. Would this allow for the town to resume selling plots as like a pre-need? So like, say, a family would like to buy plots now, in anticipation for when they are needed?
Without going to the cemetery commission, gut feeling is yes, but we can confirm that. But yes, that's the idea.
Okay.
What? Well, I think we found somebody to take Donna O'Connor's place.
At current Mountain View Cemetery, I know the town is running out of space, and the town is legally obligated, if you can confirm this, it's a state law that we are legally obligated to provide a place for people to be buried. So at current Mountain View Cemetery, where are we looking, at what point are we going to like sort of run out of space at Mountain View?
So I would anticipate within approximately 8 to 10 years. So the trends vary based on single, double, triple, quadruple graves. So we have a limited number of the double and single graves left, and that's where most people are desiring to be buried because it's more economical. And a lot of families, traditionally with older graves, people would buy 6 grave plots and their entire family would stay in Shrewsbury for 100 years and be buried together. That's just not the trend anymore. So taking an aggregate of all of the lots that are available and the anticipated trends with each, it's about 8 to 10 years that we would run out of space.
Okay, thank you.
It's that long?
So I think prior estimates, we've gone a little bit more towards the 5 to 8 year period, but that's factoring in if we were to resume pre-need sales. So that would increase the numbers a little bit. So over the last few years, we've limited to the only immediate need.
Those are for in the new sections, right? The new section.
Correct. So QQ and OO.
There's graves that are owned, grave sites that are owned, that obviously haven't been used yet.
Correct.
So it depends how people pass, right? If people have already bought graves for whatever reason, depends how they get filled. So that could be to your point of how long they last.
Correct.
At some point, we're gonna run out.
Yeah, I mean, so a certain year, it could be that everybody who passes away has a family plot that's already existing.
And the longer we wait, the more it's gonna cost.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman? Yes.
2 quick questions. On the new part of the cemetery, the foot of the hill, so is that too wet to put graves there, or is that still up for debate? There's a lot of water down there. So is that, I know where the dirt is now and where the brush is and that. Is that included in that 8 to 10 year?
No, so at the Mountain View Cemetery.
Correct, Mountain
So
View
it is
Cemetery.
fairly wet. There is wetlands in that area. To be honest, I'm not sure if that could be used
Yeah, it'd be tough.
for extra space. And if we could, we wouldn't get very many.
And then that's not built in the estimate. That's not assuming it's part of the 8 to 10. And then just a silly question. So the oldest part of the cemetery, it seems like the gravestones are sporadic. Are there some plots that were purchased 150 years ago that just are throughout, or what's our obligation at that point to keep them? Or is it just untouched and we don't look at it?
Yeah, so the Massachusetts general law, my understanding of it is upon the passing of the person who purchased the plot, burial rights transfer to their spouse and then so on and so forth through the generations. So I don't think we have a legal basis of saying, this plot has been emptied for 100 years and there hasn't been any burials, sort of like an eminent domain. Can we take those back?
It's just interesting if you walk through it, the spaces, there's a lot.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Open space.
Maybe someone didn't want a neighbor.
We bought 2 for later development.
Yeah,
Perfect.
little buffer, yep.
Yeah, for a duplex later, is that just?
This is one of the, usually the longest parts of the Finance Committee hearings. It's not tonight.
So it sounds like this needs to be approved now, because if you're talking 8 years, this is gonna take time to build out this new section. I mean, we really can't wait on this. This is priority, I would think, right? How many years do you anticipate it would take to create the new section?
Gut feeling, probably 3 years to
Right,
build.
so we need to move.
We originally had received an estimate from our consultant that they could do it over a 10-year period, but we felt if we're going to do phase 1, we're going to do phase 1 so we don't disrupt. For 10 continuous years, we're still building it. That to us doesn't make sense. So we're looking at the entire phase 1 build out all of Phase 1, and then,
Yes. This Phase 1, how much of the available space are we using?
I can get that for you. It's,
Roughly half or
oh, no, I'd say less than a quarter.
less than a quarter? Okay.
To put it in perspective, the access drive to Prospect Park, you kind of can see in the, sort of in the middle of the screen. We're taking it from that point southwesterly toward Merriam Ave, and then just down to 140. So it's that slower area that we have. And there's a wetland along right across from Boylston Circle. So we're actually south of south of that point. So it's literally, it's probably less than a quarter, but I can get you the exact or acreage of that.
I have enough. May I ask,
Yes, I'm
this
sorry,
was, I think my colleagues know, I was challenging the need for this a little bit and understanding what our requirements are. But if we run out of space at Mountain View and we're legally, by the state, required, what is that process? I mean, is there something in the general laws that say you actually have to build more space for burials, or you just have to find an alternative? I'm just curious what.
Well, it doesn't have to be there. It could be somewhere else, but the town has to have.
The town has to
cemetery.
build something? Like, what do towns do when they just run out of space and there's just not a practical space for them?
It doesn't have to be within our borders, but you have to provide some type of guaranteed option. There are towns that buy into, large facilities in places like Paxton. There's a private entity, I forget what the name of it is, the Worcester County Memorial. Yeah, so you can establish relationships with groups like that. So
Okay.
it doesn't necessarily have to be.
And not to completely belabor, because I know you guys want to go home. Just out of in terms of process, so this goes to town meeting and we approve the funding for the schematic, if you will, and then we do an RFP to get bids on what it would cost. And so this all goes through town approval in terms of,
Right.
so, okay. Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
May I ask another question? May I ask another question? So, as far as the current use of Prospect Park, there are a lot of trails, the Garden of Sweet Remembrance with the pergola, that will all be preserved, the garden area, like this wouldn't even approach that garden area. So on the picture, on the map we're looking at here, that entrance on the right-hand side that is on Prospect Street, is that where the current entry is to Prospect Park with the stone pillars where most people park when they want to walk the trails?
So on the map, the northernmost entrance is the existing Prospect Park entrance.
Okay.
And you kind of can see the little bump out there is probably about where the gate is now.
Okay.
And so the idea was to also to provide actual parking
For the trails.
for the trails and for the actual park itself.
Okay. So the existing trails would not, does any of this, the part that we're looking at developing, would that impact any of the existing trails? If I'm correct, I think everything is north of this area.
To be honest, there might be one that comes in close to the gate that heads sort of down toward Boylston Circle, but to be honest, exactly where it is, I'm not 100% sure. I can find that out for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just remind everybody, this, I don't, the reason this was bought, this was a cemetery. I mean, things change, it was bought in 1976, but things change, you know. It's not the whole hill, that's for sure. Okay, anything else? Okay. Good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I can take Article 12. So Article 12 is a request to acquire a portion of 32 Old Colony Drive by gift. The town was approached in the past few months by the owner of 32 Old Colonial Drive, offering a portion of their land, which is approximately 3.5 acres, to be donated to the town and designated as open space. This parcel is actually adjacent to another town-owned parcel that is 3.5 acres in size, that is for open space purposes as well. And we would be able to access the parcel that would be gifted to us in addition to the town-owned parcel, which is currently landlocked by an existing access easement off of Sword Street. So Taylor, if you want to just move to the next slide. The brown area in total is 32 Old Colony. The area that is hatched, so the cross-hatching, would be the 3.5 acres that the property owner is looking to gift the town of Shrewsbury, and the green parcel is the parcel that we actually already own, which is currently landlocked, and the majority of that land is wetlands. I believe it was given to the town because it's unusable and was associated with that subdivision to the north. And then it's a little bit difficult to read on the screen, but you do have in your packets the 50-foot wide access easement off of Sword Street is shown in the red area there. So again, this would meet our strategic goals of providing active and passive recreation on land, and also preserving any open and natural spaces and protecting our natural resources. So the ask again is for the town to accept the gift of land. There's the only strings attached that I see is that the owner would like this to be designated as an open space and not for general municipal purposes or any other purposes, which I see is in concert with what we've been looking at in terms of our open space and recreation plan, as well as our strategic plan.
Can I ask you a question? Is there actually a legal definition of open space?
We do have one in our open space and recreation plan that I believe is a definition from the state's Department of Conservation and Recreation.
So when somebody developed a cluster, and it says they deeded land and it says open space, right? There's parcels all over.
Yep.
Is that legally protected land? Not conservation land, open space.
It eventually is what the deed says
If
the land
deed
is.
says open space, is that a legal term, like it has to stay open?
I'll have to get you that information. I'm not 100%
Because
certain.
we have a lot of land that says open space. But there are other subdivisions where the land was just deeded. It's open tracts of land, like that would be. And it just says they deeded the land. And I'm just curious, because I think some of it predated the inclusionary, not the inclusionary.
The cluster bylaw.
The cluster bylaw.
Yep.
I was just curious if open space really meant anything. Because I couldn't find it. I'm not saying it didn't, I'm just curious.
We can look into that.
A few questions. Why does the property owner want to deed it over to the town?
Sure. So they're a longstanding owner within the town of Shrewsbury, and they have seen the benefits of open space within the town of Shrewsbury and actually want to give back to the town related to that. That is what has been referred to me from the owner.
Okay. And a couple, if I may, Mr. Chair, two more quick questions. So in terms of to protect against future adverse possession claims, so it abuts property and landowners here, what do we need to do to protect against that?
Well, it's designated it would be designated for open space purposes, so that would be the protection.
Absolute shield, okay.
Yes.
And then last question, from a due diligence perspective, not that I expect there anything to be there, but from a deed, looking at the deed, making sure we have good title, making sure there was never anything on that property, what, if anything, would we do, or what would we do in similar situations?
Yeah, we could do a title search for sure related to that. I'm not sure if a full 21E report is
Yeah, no, I wouldn't
required
expect
for an
that.
open space.
Because you're gonna
parcel.
have historical use most likely anyways if
Correct.
you were to do that search?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this?
That's all I have. No, thank you.
Okay. Do we have to add anything else onto this?
Yeah, or one additional article. So we're proposing an article for the town to acquire a parcel of land which is formerly a portion of Chase Terrace. This is a open parcel, roughly 5,158 square feet. It's immediately adjacent to 1 to 7 Maple Avenue. And we see this as a great opportunity in concert with the vision for the town center and the future development of 1 to 7 Maple Avenue to provide additional mobility aspects, including pedestrian access, lighting, landscaping, and potentially parking within the town center. So this property came on the market earlier this week. By adding this warrant article, we're putting ourselves in a position to be able to seek an appropriation from town meeting and close on the property after negotiations with the seller. So we'd work on that over the next few weeks and update the board if we're, once we have a sales price, if we're able to get one. And then we would put a plan together for the funding sources that we have available to us and bring it back to you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Okay,
Makes sense.
okay, next article.
That's it?
No, I mean, next article on the warrant. I mean, on our agenda.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you have?
You would just have to vote
Oh, we gotta vote
to
to sign.
sign the 13 article special town meeting warrant for October 17th, 2022.
Have a motion to sign the warrant?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Okay, next order of business is to review and act on the appointment of members to the Shrewsbury Cultural Council to fill a vacancy. This actually, I don't know if I have the most current, but it's to fill vacancies for a term to expire on February 10th, 2023. We have two people who applied, Lauren Blumberg and Jane Seibels. There can be up to 21 people on this council, and I think we have, what, 7?
Yes,
So
7 seats.
there's no reason, this is not competitive at this point. So it's a pleasure of the board. Yes?
Can I just ask a technical question? So from a term standpoint, if we select 2, if we vote them both in, is one term expire to fill in the vacancy and one a 3-year term?
Probably should be.
I would just, they could be,
I'm just
or we
following.
could just have them both in the same time because one of them is the end of a normal term.
Okay, I just,
Either way, whatever you want to do. Usually the terms don't end at this time of the year, so they usually end like around this time, right?
Yeah, I'm pulling up the other member terms just for reference.
I thought they usually end in February. A weird ending.
Yeah, so 2022, 20, or sorry,
No,
excuse
no,
me,
no.
2025,
No,
yeah,
it's
they're all
February.
February 10th.
They're all February. So it would be, whatever you want to do.
no, I don't care. I mean, I just,
Just end them at the same time, and then they get back in a regular cycle. Yes, no?
I'm fine with that. Are we talking about appointing both of these?
Yeah.
I think
Sure,
that works for me.
works for me too.
okay.
I want to also note that both of these individuals applied previously for
Right.
cultural council positions, and they're clearly still interested, and so I
Right.
think that be a good addition to have them both.
Okay. Did we have a motion? I don't
So
even-
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Lauren Bloomberg and Jane Seibels to the Shrewsbury Cultural Council for a term set to expire February 10th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item 11 is to review and act on a donation bin permit application for CMRK Inc., 571 Boston Turnpike, for a permit that's effective through December 31st, 2022, pursuant to Article 25 of the General Bylaws. Did we establish this is all set? We can vote on this? Yes? Oh, wait a minute. You weren't the one who, somebody's gonna get back to me. This is okay to, everything's okay, right?
Yeah, as far as
I believe so.
work, so-
Okay, because there was an issue and then it got straightened
Yeah.
out. Okay. So, you have a motion?
Yes, I move approval.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item 12 is to review and act to authorize the chair to sign a notice to sign a disclosure by a non-elected municipal employee of financial interest form as required by Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 19, to authorize the town manager to serve as a steering committee and board member on the West Suburban Health Group.
So moved.
Second.
Any question? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item 13 is to review and act to authorize town manager to change all the board policies and procedures to select board.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion is second. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item 14 is to review and act on the address change request for 29 Frybeck Road pursuant to Board of Selectmen Policy 29. We were told that everything is all set on that. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item 15 is review and act on the request for the 11th Annual Turkey Trot for Memory Road Race on Thursday, November 24th at 8 a.m., beginning in the vicinity of the First Congregational Church and on the town common and ending at the intersection of Route 140 and Prospect Street. It's the pleasure of the board.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item 16 is to review and act to award the sale of bonds associated with the police station and public safety system project. Mr. Mizuka, do you have anything on that?
I do. So this is the final borrowing for the police station project. We had received 5 responses when we accessed the market. The most favorable total interest cost is 3.58%, which is still a very good interest rate today, much higher than our original borrowing for this project, which was less than 2%, but obviously a lot has changed since January of 2020, 2021. So happy to answer any questions of the board. This is a borrowing of $4,875,000, which we will handle the interest rate, the interest payment in fiscal year 23 as discussed earlier at the special town meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item 17 is to review and act to offer comments on the environmental notification form for the proposed GFI development property located at 160 Holden Street and 274 to 378 Holden Street. Ms. Lass, do you want to give us a quick overview of what the ENF is about?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you'll see in your packets, GFI, who owns the former Worcester Sand and Stone property, as well as additional property at 274 to 378 Holden Street, has been working with the town for a series of years related to how they see those two properties being developed into the future. And they currently have concept plans for both 160 Holden Street and 274 to 378 Holden Street for industrial style buildings in that location. Their proposals meet certain criteria that require them to file what's called an environmental notification form, or an ENF, with the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, which is also known as MEPA. So I apologize for the acronyms, and I'll speak slowly related to them. And please interrupt me if you have any questions as I'm speaking related to that. The MEPA review allows for, requires that the developer provide their office with a series of information about the project, such as how many acres of land the current project has, how many acres of land the project is going to impact, how many parking spaces the project is going to provide, traffic trips per day, any environmental impacts that will be occurring, such as any impacts located close to or in wetlands, any greenhouse gas studies that they have done. And this is just the first step in their state review. And the ENF allows for state agencies as well as the local municipality to provide comments on the filing. Based upon comments that are collected, the MIPA office also provides their review. They send a policy analyst out to review the site and to review the documents. And ultimately, within a 45-day period, the MIPA office issues what's called an ENF certificate, which then would outline additional steps that the developer would have to take to review certain aspects of the project and certain mitigation. So it's been quite some time since the Board of Selectmen has been asked to review an ENF, or environmental notification form. So I'll go slowly through it tonight, and we can certainly provide more commentary and talk more about it on your October 11th meeting, because comments are not due until October 13th. I am gathering appropriate town staff to review this ENF filing on Friday of this week, and we'll be reviewing land impacts, traffic impacts, environmental impacts, greenhouse gas impacts. And we'll be providing you as a board with the comments from the staff, but also looking to you as elected body officials here in town if you have any thoughts or concerns, or actually even if we recommend the project. That's always good to say to MIPA as well. We welcome this project. We actually went through a rezoning process with this landowner. Those are good items to put within our comment letter. So I prepared a brief memo in your drive. I know I did leave out some things that we'll certainly get some clarification on, but just wanted to give an initial status on that. You have the plans and the filing. It's a very large filing, so we've kind of pared down the major plans so you can see where the buildings are proposed on the site, where the driveways are proposed in and out, and the like. And I can certainly work with any board member individually related to your questions or comments, or give you an executive summary so that you're not delving through all of the nitty-gritty documents. That's our job as staff to bring that to the forefront and move that forward. So is there any other process questions that I can help answer this evening?
I was just going to ask Kristen, thank you for that summary. That was really helpful. Is there anything in your preliminary review of this form that you consider concerning, or an area that we should potentially focus in on? So the town staff have been working with GFI for quite some time on both of these properties, so we have a pretty good handle on what they were going to submit as a proposal. I think in terms of town staff, we would comment that we are currently working with the developer on sewer connections on Clinton Street and Holden Street for the project, so we'd make that known. We did file with your approval a MassWorks grant that we're still waiting to hear back on for that construction of the sewer main. We would definitely be providing commentary that we are looking, and GFI has committed verbally to an easement or land to the town of Shrewsbury related to our wellhead protection areas. So we would comment on that aspect. And we'd also comment that Holden Street and Clinton Street is a state highway layout, Route 70. Holden Street is a town layout, so we'd be looking at those intersections and those roadways for any impacts that are required to that. But we'd also be commenting that this project would allow for a significant tax base within the town of Shrewsbury. It meets our goals in our master plan for this land being commercial and industrial, and the like. So those are just some of the things that I can anticipate us talking about. We're going to dig a little bit deeper this week in reviewing the documents.
I would add that going back when Solomon Pond Mall was built, there was a competing project that was being proposed there. And going back actually even before that, one of the big things is going to be protecting the aquifer, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure the state's going to be very, very interested in that because it's not just the wells. The water flows that way underground. And I know just from from that proposal that was going through, it was DEP had a lot of interest in protecting that area. And so there'll be a lot of interest in that, and I'm sure our staff will have that too. This is big and complicated, and they only give us 30 days to respond on the initial, but there'll be other steps along the way. So first is this, then there's the next step with the state and the other stuff. But I would encourage anybody, if you get a chance to sit and look, I would sit with the staff and ask, because it covers anything that's related. It's not just here. They're going to be looking at traffic over at 290. They're going to look at West Main Street. You'd be surprised the scope, but water is going to be huge on this, because all our wells are there. So anyway, so you'll have something maybe the middle of next week?
Yep, and I'd also like to just encourage that commenting is not just limited to members of the staff or the select board or the planning board. A public copy is available at the library for anyone in the public wishing to look for it, and we've also posted it through our planning board website. So it is available and visible for anybody in the public to review. They can certainly call the town manager's office or the planning department if they'd like more information as well.
Right, but for our board, after the staff has had a chance to review it, it might be easier to digest the kinds of things that we will be interested in. We're gonna be able to take a cue from you, and it'll be boiled down into something that might be a little bit more understandable for us, because it's a little bit bigger than us, I think.
Yeah.
But anyways, so we'll get another chance to talk about this, and we should give ourselves some time on the 11th for that. So, thank you. Are there any other questions right now? Okay.
So, I'm sorry,
And we're not the only ones who are going to get the comment on this. Worcester is going to get the comment on this, Boylston, I think.
Yep, abutting municipalities and the Regional Planning Commission, the planning board will be discussing it next Thursday at their meeting.
Right, and all the various state agencies, so there can be a lot of people going to get a bite at the apple, right?
Yes.
Have anything you want to add, Mr. Newsback?
Not at this time.
I think Ms. Conlon had a question.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask, like, should, the questions that I have about, the impact that this project might have on our water resources and traffic and intersections and things like that, would we hold off until we have more information?
You can ask.
Feed them to us.
Sure.
Send them anytime.
Like now, or should I?
You can ask now.
Appropriate. So, just concerns with traffic coming out of the high school, and the proximity to this development. Obviously having what type of traffic would this bring to that intersection, and not just leaving the high school, but at the intersection of Holden Street and West Main Street, North Quinsigamond. That tends to be kind of a dangerous intersection already. So just have questions and concerns about that. And then this is a lot of impervious surface in an area that currently, if I'm correct, has no current structures built on it. Is that right? So just curious how that will impact the recharge areas for our aquifer. And, we have our wellhead protection areas, but there's also how will this impervious surface impact runoff and our aquifer recharge. And I know just understanding how aquifers work, they're not always, recharge areas are not always in the same place where you draw the water from. So I just have concerns about the impact on that. Our water resources are obviously something really important to take care of and protect.
Yeah, I can comment initially, and I didn't mean
Sure.
to.
No, I think those are all my questions.
So the number of trips per day and the impacts to intersections is very briefly touched upon in this environmental impact report. The developer will be required to submit what's called this is an environmental notification form. The developer will be required in the next phase to submit a draft environmental impact report to the state, and that will have much more detailed transportation. So we could definitely comment that we are concerned about these intersections. We'll probably get more information on those in the next few months.
Okay.
Related to stormwater and recharge, currently the site at least at the Worcester Sand and Stone site, everything just runs off the site. There is no infiltration. This developer has been working with us, like I said, for a series of years, and they are fully aware of the recharge requirements. We actually have the aquifer protection area in our zoning bylaw that they have to meet those recharge requirements and our stormwater bylaw requirements. So I can't say it's going to be perfect, but there will be more recharge in this area than there currently is, even with the amount of impervious. But we can certainly get the board more information on that. Absolutely.
Can I ask another question? Sure. Is there currently any like public access to Newton Pond at all, like in the existing, the way it exists?
A little bit down by the
dam. Yep.
Okay. Just curious if that's like a consideration with this project.
There has been discussion about access to another park in the location. I'm going to probably not get the park name correct. Let's see if I can pull it up. I think it's more closer to the top of Lake Quinsigamon than Newton Pond.
Is it Gouch Park?
Yes, Gouch Park. Thank you, Justin and Michelle.
Yeah, that's a small little area.
Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I said,
You
anybody
don't have to
who
get
wants
them all tonight.
Keep you guys here all night with all my questions.
Is it possible to, but those plans are difficult to look at on something this big. Is it possible to get maybe something at least 11 by 14, some of the basic plans?
Yeah, we can plot them out or get a hard copy from the developer, absolutely.
But just 11 by 14, so somebody has something that.
I think we'll get full size, because I think even 11 by 17 is going to be quite
Well,
small for these two.
How big's full size? Not
2 by 3. We can get you printouts any size you'd like.
well, something that just get a sense. That the
Sure.
members get a sense on. We don't need the 24 by 30.
Sure.
Okay. Anyways, anything else on that tonight? Okay. Sorry. Where are we now? 18 and 19. They're two different apartment complexes, but they're both review and act on the 2022 affordable housing rent increase requests. One is for Shrewsbury Audubon, and the other is for Quinn 35. These are, well, they're usually annual requests, increases that are allowed based on HUD's annual area median incomes that are set, and then guidance from DHCD. And both these facilities or companies requested that we approve. We approve these, right? The increases as the guidance from DHCD allows. So it's pretty much a formula. It's following the formula that's laid down by the state. So
Correct.
does anybody have any questions on this? No? Just so people are aware, they can't just automatically raise the rates. It's a new lease they can do, and then if there's when a renewal comes up, they can do it. They can't just tomorrow just go in and raise the rates. It's got to be a logical time. So, anyways, any questions on this? Okay, so can I have a motion on the rent increase request for Shrewsbury Audubon?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We have motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item 19 is for the rent increase request for Quinn 35.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item 20 is to review and act on a proclamation request for Arbor Day pursuant to the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board Policy number 30. This is part of the requirement we have for tree designate, what do you call it?
Tree City
Tree City,
application.
right. Okay, so,
Move approval.
Second.
okay. Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item 21 is to review the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee charge and the application period. Any comments, questions on this evening?
I think what we're trying to do is extend the period.
Right.
Also just reiterate that it's open to all residents, and that we also are looking for a high school age junior or senior that resides in Shrewsbury but doesn't necessarily have to attend Shrewsbury High School, just be of that age. We had the charge out there but didn't receive enough applicants in order to form a committee.
Right, and so we want to make the appointment, hopefully we can make the appointment on October 11th, right? Is that what we had tentatively planned? Yes? Okay, so then when would they have?
Close the 4th.
We close the
It would
4th?
be the same as the Historic District Commission, so you guys have
Right,
a week
okay.
to review.
Agree?
Or would you?
What?
So we're gonna leave it open until October 4th?
Yeah, so that's another week, right? Week and a half?
Another push.
I think it'd be the 18th would, sorry. Yeah, close the 18th, appoint the 25th is the other option.
Just a technical question. If we don't have the full number for the committee, will we still form the committee, or it's, no?
I don't think we can.
Well, we gotta have at least a quorum. We have to have enough for at least a quorum. So if it's a 7-member board, right? As long as we had a quorum, we could.
I guess, but I mean, part of it, I think, is making sure that we have the right mix of people. Like,
Right.
we're not looking to have a committee that's all the same. Like, we wanted it to be intentionally diverse, so I think that, to me, is something that I would prioritize over forming a committee.
No.
Just-
We should try to start with a full committee, yes.
If we only receive 7 applicants and are not intentionally diverse, then I don't know how we proceed from there.
I'm sorry. We had it tentatively for the 18th and appoint on the 25th, sorry. And that's what we had internally, so that gives a couple of weeks. Let's see what we got,
Cross that bridge when we get to it.
right?
So just, if I could clarify, we just spoke about this the other day, and Beth, you just mentioned, it's membership on the board. It's not required to be a registered voter or a U.S. citizen, but just a resident of Shrewsbury. So it is open to people who are not U.S. citizens.
A resident of town,
Yes,
yes.
thank you.
Okay. So extend it to the 18th and plan to make the appointments on the 25th.
Yeah.
Yes?
Sounds good.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, item 22 is an email dated September 12th from Representative Kane, telling us that the Senate and the House voted to enact the designation of Select Board. The Governor signed it after that, so that's all set. Item 23 is an email dated September 14th from Sophia Flionis, legislative aide, Representative Kane, regarding the Municipal Road Safety Program Initiative Grant for $34,953.59. Mr. Miskov, who gets that grant? Is there a specific department?
I believe this is associated with the police department and their enforcement activities.
Oh, okay, I didn't see a particular on it, okay. And then item 24 was an email, a letter dated September 14th from Sashi Menden regarding Meals on, well, he's a Meals on Wheels volunteer, questioning identification badge for Meals on Wheels drivers. His issue is that Meals on Wheels drivers are not being given identification badges. I think they should have some, whether they get them from the town or something. We talk about that offline?
Sure.
Okay. I think somebody should have some kind of identification, however we get it. We just gotta figure out how to do it. Thank you. Item 25 is an email dated September 16th from Jackie Trotter, 218 Holden Street, regarding the Roman poultry. Somebody has poultry in the area, and they're wondering, I guess, throughout the neighborhood, or at least over a couple of other properties. Hold that for a second. Item 26 is an email dated September 20th from Kelly and Ken Stock, 6 Kirk Street. Same issue. Mr. Mizikar or Ms. Lass, you know anything about the status of that? Is what's happening there?
So I've been working with Animal Control Officer Elms, and he has been working with the property owner with the poultry, as well as speaking with the neighbors related to options that are available. We can continue to engage Mr. Elms of his current conversations related to that, and report back to the board and report back to the property owners.
The meeting, I just had a real quick casual conversation. Is something about Board of Health has some jurisdiction over that?
Yes, if they're not amicably able to come up with a solution, there are other options related to the Board of Health and some other enforcement items.
Okay. All right. So you can just keep us informed. Item 27 is an email dated September 20th from Karen Moriarty, the paralegal with Keegan Whirlin LLP, regarding NSTAR Gas Company, DBA Eversource Energy, regarding a notice of filing and a public hearing. It's a petition for approval of 2019 to 21 3-year energy efficiency plan term report. So noted. Item 28 is from the same person regarding the NSTAR Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy. It's the same thing, petition for approval of the term report, so noted. Item 29 is an email dated September 22nd from Jeffrey Dugan, Assistant Director for Community Services, Mass Office of the on Disability, regarding a community access monitor training, virtual training, November 2nd and November 3rd, from 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., so noted. And item 30 is an email dated September 22nd from Priya Ratnam, Director of the Shrewsbury Public Library, regarding the library strategic planning committee, requesting a member of the board to be part of that committee. And I believe Ms. Conlon bravely has stepped up to volunteer for being a part of that committee. 3 meetings, I guess, over a couple of months.
Yes.
And I saw in the emails that she accepted your offer, so thank you for stepping up. And I believe that's it for this evening. Am I correct? Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have motion.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. This meeting is adjourned. Good evening. Are we done?
Don't run out.